Sibongile was a quiet, hard-working young woman from the small village of KwaMbele. She spent her days sewing clothes for neighbors, dreaming of something more, a bigger life, a bigger love. That's when she met Nkosana. He was everything she never thought she could have. Tall, confident, with smooth city charm and sweet words that made her heart race. He told her she was special. He said she deserved more than dusty roads and sewing machines. He made her feel seen. Every time they met, he spoke of the future, a house in the city, a little shop where she could sew her beautiful dresses, children laughing. He told her, "You and me, we're forever." And she believed him. How could she not? No one had ever looked at her like that, like she mattered. Her friends warned her, "City men love and leave." But Sibongile shook her head. "You don't know him like I do," she'd say with a shy smile. She started stitching little clothes for the baby they talked about, picking out names, dreaming of their wedding day. In her heart, it all felt so real, so close. She gave him her trust, her love, her body, everything. She thought she had found the one, the kind of love that lasts a lifetime. But what she didn't know was that Nkosana's love had an expiry date, and while she was falling deeper, he was already pulling away. Reality was coming, sharp, cold, and unexpected. At first, everything felt perfect. Sibongile would wake up with a smile, her hand resting gently on her growing belly. She believed she was carrying a piece of love inside her, something sacred, something beautiful. But slowly, something in Nkosana began to change. He started coming home late, answering her questions with cold silence. The warmth in his eyes faded. His touch, once so soft and loving, now felt distant, like a stranger's. At first, she tried to ignore it. Maybe he's just stressed, she told herself. Maybe he's worried about the baby too. But deep down, she felt something slipping away. When she brought up the baby names they once laughed about, he rolled his eyes. When she sewed tiny clothes and held them up with excitement, he barely looked up from his phone. Her heart began to ache in quiet ways, the kind of pain that doesn't scream, but sinks deeper each day. Then came the night she would never forget. The rain was falling hard outside, loud and heavy, as if the sky itself was crying. She stood by the door, watching Nkosana throw clothes into a bag. Her hands trembled as she grabbed his arm, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she whispered, "don't leave me like this. I need you. We need you." He looked at her, not with love, not even with regret, but with coldness. He pulled his arm away and laughed, a sharp, cruel sound that shattered whatever hope she was holding on to. "This isn't my problem anymore," he said, slinging the bag over his shoulder. "I didn't ask for this." Just like that, he walked out into the storm, leaving her alone, pregnant, heartbroken, and stunned. She stood frozen by the door, watching the man she loved disappear into the night like he never even cared. The walls felt like they were closing in. Her legs gave in, and she sank to the floor, hugging her belly, trying to understand how love could turn so quickly into betrayal. She had given him everything, her trust, her body, her dreams, and in return, he gave her silence, cruelty, and a broken promise. The rain outside matched the storm in her chest, but even as the pain crushed her, a tiny kick inside her belly reminded her she wasn't completely alone. And though her heart was breaking, something inside her whispered, "You still have something worth fighting for." The days after Nkosana left felt like a never-ending nightmare for Sibongile. One moment she had dreams of a happy family, and the next, she was alone, jobless, pregnant, and forgotten. Her small room in KwaMbele felt colder than ever, not because of the weather, but because the love she once held onto had vanished. She had no one to turn to. Her parents had passed on years ago. Her aunt, who once helped her with sewing, now looked at her with disappointment. "You should have known better," she had said, closing the door in her face. The few friends she had, they disappeared too, not out of cruelty, but out of fear of getting too close to her. Shame. With her belly growing and her body weakening, Sibongile started walking to the markets of Mbokotho every day, not to shop, but to search. She'd wait near the vegetable stalls and fish sellers, quietly watching for anything left behind. Bruised fruit, broken bread, anything at all. Some people looked at her with pity. Others just stared and whispered, not even bothering to hide their judgment. "There's the girl who got dumped. She thought she was special because of a city man. Now look at her, walking around like a beggar." The words pierced her like thorns, but she kept her head down. She had no choice. She wasn't just feeding herself, she was carrying life, and that tiny life inside her gave her a strange kind of strength. There were nights when she'd sit in the dark, holding her belly and crying softly. Her tears weren't just for Nkosana. They were for everything she lost, her dignity, her future, her peace. But in the middle of that pain, something began to change. Not suddenly, but slowly. She started talking to the baby in her womb. "I don't have much, my angel," she'd whisper, "but I promise I'll never leave you like he left us." Those words became her fuel. People saw a broken girl walking through dusty roads, but what they didn't see was the fire growing inside her, quiet but strong. Every scrap she found, every step she took, every tear she wiped, it was a seed of survival being planted deep in her soul. Sibongile didn't know how or when, or even if things would get better, but she knew one thing for sure. She wouldn't give up, not for herself, not for the baby, because even when the world turns its back on you, a mother's love can become the loudest voice in the silence. Sibongile sat alone one afternoon, staring at the corner of her room where her old sewing machine was gathering dust. It had been months since she'd touched it, months filled with hunger, whispers, and silent tears. Her belly was now big, heavy with life. Her body was tired, but her spirit refused to give up. She thought back to the days before Nkosana, when she used to sew clothes for neighbors, just to earn a little. It wasn't much, but it gave her purpose. Slowly, almost without thinking, she pulled the machine closer and sat down. Her fingers trembled as she threaded the needle. But as soon as the first stitch was made, something inside her came alive. She didn't have new fabric, but she had a few old clothes, torn and forgotten in a box. She began cutting and stitching, turning one useless shirt into something new. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. And for the first time in weeks, she felt a small flicker of pride. The next day, she made another, then another. She hung the pieces outside her door just to let them dry. But something unexpected happened. A neighbor walked by, stopped and asked, "Did you make this?" Sibongile nodded shyly. The woman smiled and said, "Can you make one for my daughter?" Word spread faster than she imagined. More women started coming by, bringing torn clothes, old fabric, or just a little bit of money. Sibongile worked from morning to night, stitching by hand when the power was out, sewing even when her back hurt and her feet were swollen. Every stitch was more than just thread and fabric. It was survival. It was strength. It was her way of saying, "I'm still here." The women didn't just come for clothes. They came to talk, to sit with her, to share stories. Slowly, she became more than just the girl who was left. She became the young mother who never gave up. Her tiny room, once filled with silence and shame, now buzzed with laughter and the hum of her sewing machine. She named each dress she made, not out loud, but in her heart. One was called Hope, another was Strength, one was New Beginning. She didn't have a business plan. She didn't know what branding meant. All she had was pain, skill, and a promise she made to her unborn child. "We will survive." She didn't know it yet, but each thread she pulled, each button she sewed, was weaving a new life, one where she would no longer be known by her past, but by her power. And all of it began with that one simple choice, to sit down, pick up the broken pieces, and sew. Sibongile's small sewing corner in KwaMbele had turned into something she never dreamed possible. What started as simple repairs and patchwork grew into full dresses, colourful shirts, and bold designs. Women from nearby villages came not just for clothes, but for a piece of hope. She gave each piece meaning, telling stories with colours and patterns that spoke of strength, survival, and pride. Word spread beyond Mbokotho and KwaMbele. One day, a visitor from Nairobi came looking for the talented seamstress behind the Mama Africa Threads brand. They wanted to showcase her work at a fashion show in the city. Sibongile was nervous, but excited. She had never stepped into a big city before, let alone walked the runway in front of crowds. Her first show was nothing short of magical. Models wore her designs with confidence, the fabrics flowing like rivers of colour on the runway. The crowd cheered, and photographers snapped pictures. Sibongile's heart swelled with pride. Here she was, a single mother from a dusty village, making her mark in a world she once thought was too big for her. Soon, invitations came from Kampala and other cities. With every show, Her name grew louder. Magazine articles called her the Queen of Resilience and Mama Africa. People weren't just talking about her clothes, they were talking about her story, how a young woman, left alone and pregnant, had turned pain into power. Mama Africa Threads wasn't just a brand, it was a symbol. For many, it meant hope, that no matter where you come from, your dreams could come alive. It meant strength, that even when the world says no, you can say yes to yourself. And it meant love, the kind of love a mother carries for her child, pushing her to rise above everything. Back in KwaMbele, life was changing too. Sibongile built a small workshop where she trained other women, many of them single mothers like her. Together, they sewed not only clothes, but new futures. The same sewing machine that once sat lonely in a dusty corner now hummed with life and laughter. Even though her days became busy with orders and meetings, Sibongile never forgot the girl she was, the one who begged in the rain, the one who searched the markets for scraps. That girl was her strength, her fuel. Every stitch she made carried her story, reminding her that success was not just about money or fame. It was about rising after falling, loving when it hurts, and never giving up. Mama Africa Threads was more than fashion. It was a movement. A single mother's dream turned into a beacon for thousands. And for Sibongile, it was proof that even the smallest flame can light up the darkest night. Nkosana's life did not go the way he expected. After leaving Sibongile, he thought he was free from responsibility, free to live as he pleased. But freedom quickly turned into chaos. He lost his job at a small company in the city. The work was hard, but he had always counted on the paycheck to keep things going. Without a steady income, bills piled up. Instead of looking for a new job or fixing his mistakes, Nkosana started going to the local gambling spots. At first, it was just for fun, a way to forget his troubles. But soon, gambling took over. He lost his savings, money he had planned to use for a new start. The woman he left Sibongile for, a flashy city girl who promised excitement and luxury, soon showed her true colors. When Nkosana's luck ran out and his money disappeared, she vanished too. She left him with empty promises and broken dreams, just like he had left Sibongile. Now Nkosana was alone. No job, no money, no one to call a friend. His pride turned into shame. He couldn't go back home because he had no family to support him. He had no one to help him stand up when he fell. Days turned into weeks, and he found himself wandering the same streets he had once walked with confidence, the same streets where he had tossed away the love of a good woman without a second thought. The corners that once felt like opportunities now felt like traps. People who once smiled at him now looked away. Some recognized him and whispered, "That's Nkosana, the man who left Sibongile pregnant and alone." Those words hit harder than any punishment. He felt invisible and forgotten. He tried to find work, any work, but no one wanted to hire a man known for gambling and failure. The city's bright lights felt cold, and the nights were long and lonely. Hunger gnawed at his stomach, and regret gnawed at his heart. One night, sitting on a cold bench under a flickering streetlight, Nkosana thought about Sibongile. He remembered how she had trusted him, loved him, and even when he turned away, she stayed strong. He wondered if she was okay, if she had found happiness without him. For the first time, he felt the weight of his choices, the pain he caused, the love he lost. But feeling sorry didn't change anything. The past was a heavy chain he now carried everywhere. Nkosana's fall was complete. From a man full of charm and promises to a broken soul left wandering the streets he once owned. The boy who once dreamed of a bright future had become a shadow of himself. And while he struggled to pick up the pieces far away, Sibongile was stitching a new life, one full of hope, strength, and love. The very life he had walked away from was growing stronger without him. One quiet afternoon, as the sun was dipping low and casting long shadows over Sibongile's beautiful home, the gates suddenly buzzed. The guards, used to visitors and deliveries, opened the heavy doors and stepped outside. Standing there was a man, thin, weak, and trembling. His clothes were torn, his slippers worn out and dirty. He looked nothing like the confident man Sibongile once knew. The guards stared at him, confused and unsure. But as the man looked up, their eyes widened. It was Nkosana, the same man who had once promised her the world, now standing broken and desperate in front of her mansion. He didn't say much at first. His voice was barely a whisper, cracked and soft. "I just want something to eat," he said, looking down at the ground. His hands shook as if the weight of everything he had lost was pressing down on him. The guards hesitated. This was not a sight they expected to see. The man who had left a young woman alone and pregnant, now begging quietly at her doorstep. Some wanted to turn him away, but something about his helplessness made them pause. Inside the mansion, the news reached Sibongile quickly. Her heart skipped a beat when she heard. She didn't know what to feel. Anger, sadness, confusion. She sat still for a moment, taking in the news. Then, without hesitation, she walked out. Her steps were steady and calm. The woman who had once begged for his love was now standing tall and strong. She looked at Nkosana with clear eyes that had seen pain, betrayal, and then healing. Nkosana's eyes met hers, filled with shame and regret. He looked smaller somehow, like a child who had lost his way. "Please," he said again, voice trembling. "I'm hungry. I don't want to cause trouble." Sibongile didn't say anything at first. She could see the years of hardship in his face, the nights spent alone, the cold streets, the empty pockets. But she also saw the man who had once hurt her deeply. Then, quietly, she nodded to the guards to let him in. She walked ahead of him, leading the way into the house. Inside, the kitchen was warm, smells of fresh food filling the air. She handed him a plate of food, simple but enough. Nkosana ate slowly, almost afraid it was a dream. He looked up at her with eyes full of questions, forgiveness, hope, or maybe just survival. Sibongile didn't give answers that day. She only gave food, not because he deserved it, but because she had grown beyond hate. That moment wasn't just about feeding a hungry man. It was about something much bigger, about strength, grace, and the power to rise above the past. And in that quiet afternoon, behind the gates of a mansion built from pain and perseverance, two lives crossed paths again, changed forever. Sibongile took a deep breath and stepped out of the house. The afternoon sun caught her face, making her glow with a calm strength that had come from years of pain and hard work. She looked at Nkosana, the man who once promised her everything but left her alone and broken. Now he stood before her, trembling and weak, a shadow of the man she once knew. Their eyes met. For a moment, silence filled the space between them. She saw the shame and regret in his eyes, but she didn't feel anger anymore. That anger had burned away long ago, replaced by something stronger, peace. "I begged for your love," she said softly but clearly, her voice steady and full of meaning. "I begged you to stay when you were ready to leave me. I begged for the family we dreamed about, but you walked away." Nkosana's head bowed. He didn't say a word. He knew he didn't deserve her kindness, and yet here she was, standing tall and proud in front of him. Sibongile continued, "Today, I will give you food, not because you deserve it, but because I've grown beyond your hate." Her words were like a gentle wave, washing away years of pain, but also showing that she was no longer a victim. The guards watched in surprise, unsure what would happen next. But Sibongile didn't look angry or weak. She looked radiant, like a queen who had risen from ashes. She turned and walked toward the kitchen, with Nkosana following slowly behind her. The house smelled warm and inviting, full of fresh food and laughter from her daughter playing in the next room. She handed him a plate of food, simple, nourishing, and made with love. Nkosana ate quietly, the hunger in his eyes mixing with a new kind of respect. He realized that the woman he had hurt had become so much more than he ever imagined. Sibongile didn't wait for thanks or apologies. She didn't need them. What mattered was that she was no longer chained by the past. Her heart had healed, and she had found her own power through pain. That moment was not about revenge or sadness. It was about forgiveness, not for him, but for herself. Forgiveness that set her free and showed the world that true strength comes from rising above hate and hurt. As Nkosana finished his food, Sibongile looked at him one last time. Her eyes said everything. She had moved on. She was proud, and she would never let anyone take her peace away again. Then, without another word, she walked away, not bitter, not broken, but shining with the light of a woman who had truly grown beyond her past. Sibongile placed the plate of food gently in front of Nkosana. His hands shook as he reached for it, but she didn't say a word. Then, without looking back, she turned and walked away. Not because she was weak or afraid, but because she was stronger than ever before. Her daughter, who'd been watching quietly from the corner of the room, stared in awe. She saw her mother stand tall and calm, giving kindness when she could have given anger. It was a lesson far greater than any school could teach. A lesson about forgiveness, strength, and love. For years, Sibongile had carried the weight of pain and betrayal. She had been left alone, struggling to survive with a baby on the way. But through it all, she never lost her spirit. She fought with every breath to build a life better than the one she was given. Now, standing there, she showed the world that true success is not just about money, fame, or power. It is about grace, the ability to forgive even when it hurts, to rise above hate, and to give when you feel like holding back. Nkosana looked down at the food and tears welled up in his eyes. He knew he did not deserve her kindness, but in that moment, something shifted inside him. Seeing Sibongile's strength made him realize the depth of what he had lost. Sibongile's daughter stepped closer, shy but proud. She looked up at her mother and smiled. In that smile was hope. Hope that one day she too would have the courage to forgive and the strength to rise. Sibongile didn't say much. Her actions spoke louder than words. She showed that forgiveness is not a weakness, but a powerful choice. It frees the heart and lights the way forward. That day, the story of a young woman who was abandoned and hurt became a story of courage and transformation. Sibongile taught everyone watching that no matter how deep the pain, kindness and grace can heal wounds and create new beginnings. Her journey wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about becoming a light for others. A reminder that success without forgiveness is empty, but with it, success shines brighter than anything else. As Nkosana quietly ate the food, Sibongile's heart was calm. She knew her past was behind her. The future was hers to shape, full of love, strength, and the power to forgive. And in that simple act of handing over a plate, she changed not just one life but many, showing the world what it means to be truly strong. Sibongile's journey was nothing short of incredible. She went from being humiliated in the streets, alone, pregnant, and desperate, to becoming a woman the whole country admired. People who once whispered about her now read her story in newspapers and saw her name in lights. She didn't just survive, she transformed her life completely. With nothing but a sewing machine and a heart full of hope, she built a brand that told a new story, a story of strength, courage, and love. Mama Africa Threads became a symbol for many, showing that even from the darkest places, something beautiful can grow. Her days of begging for scraps were behind her. Now she was building a future for herself and her daughter, inspiring women all around to never give up. The girl who once cried in the rain was now standing tall, proud of everything she had achieved. And what about Nkosana, the man who once laughed when she begged for his love? He was left with nothing but regret and memories. He saw her rise from ashes and knew deep inside that he had lost a queen, a woman whose strength and grace he never deserved. Sibongile didn't need him anymore. She had her own kingdom now, built with sweat, tears, and unwavering hope. Her story is a reminder to everyone who feels broken. No matter how hard life hits you, you have the power to rise, shine, and rewrite your destiny. She wasn't just a survivor. She was a queen who rose from ashes, showing the world what true strength really means.